Gen Z seems to have a lot of problems, but is it really their fault? It might be the fathers. This is Hot Takes.
I don't like Chick-fil-A.
Taylor Swift is overrated.
If you drive a pickup truck for reasons that are other than employment related, I don't like you.
Listen to your friends who care about astrology.
Escape rooms are fun.
What is your hot take?
Drop a hot take.
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 Welcome back to Hot Takes. I'm your host, Ian Isaiah. Feels good to be doing this. I've been doing a lot of short form content, but it feels good to be doing the longer episodes again. Today, we are going to be reacting to a video put out by, I believe his name is Gen. Is the fatherlessness crisis destroying Gen Z? And so I think I'm going to revamp this channel a little bit. I want to do reaction videos, but I'm putting this out there as a tester just to see how well it does. And if you guys want to see more of this content. But I'll give you a basic rundown about what I'm thinking of doing with this channel in the future. So I want to do these reaction videos to stuff like this, Gen, Jubilee, Cut, videos like that. Start off with the headline and then my thoughts about, just based upon the headline alone, what it's about. Then we'll run through the video. Obviously, I'll pause at key moments and give some feedback, what I think about it. And then we'll do another run through again at the end, just to summarize my thoughts on the topic. All right. So let's get into it. So, is the fatherlessness crisis destroying Gen Z? Yes. To put it bluntly, yes. Yes, it is. Now, would I say it's their top problem? I don't know. It's up there. It's probably in the top 3 along with the education system and the lack of responsibility, lack of parenting. But then again, you could contribute that back to the fatherlessness problem. So maybe it is the top problem. And honestly, I've debated this before and I've been back and forth of fatherlessness is absolutely the top problem. It's not the top problem. It most likely is the cause of most of Gen Z's problems. I will say that. Because when you're in a broken family, when divorce is prevalent, when the father might be still there, but not there, if that makes sense. Like he's in the picture, but off to the corner. Yeah, I can see how a lot of these problems come up because these children are not grounded and rooted in what their parents are telling them. Instead, they're looking to other things and they're trying to solve it by themselves. And it's just not working out for them. Now, I've also heard other things of like, because of the fathers, Gen Z is less responsible. That might be a thing, that Gen Z is irresponsible because they don't have their fathers to teach them responsibility. That might be a true statement. But I've also heard other things of like, there are more gay people because the father's not in the picture. Come on. Come on.
What a load of bullshit.
I've known plenty of straight boy who's very much a mama's boy and, you know, just a wonderful gentleman to be around. And I can also imagine that it's vice versa as well, that there are some pretty not straight guys who grew up around their father. Just because they don't go hunting, hiking, and fishing every single day with their father doesn't mean they're gay. Come on. That's ridiculous. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into the video now.
What do you think a father brings to the table that a mother doesn't?
My mom was she's like the head honcho of the house.
And crime is caused by unwantedness, and abortion reduces unwantedness.
I lived my life for things that my dad wanted me to do.
There really wasn't much I did with my father. He was a workaholic.
My father was an alcoholic.
Hi again.
Hey Dad, how are you?
So today I'm out here and the question I'll be asking is, what is your relationship like with your father?
When I was born, he was still in World War II. Didn't come into my life till I was 3 or 4 years old. Worked 2 jobs. Didn't have much tolerance for kids.
Okay, I just have to say right there, that's awesome, but it's kind of sad at the same time. You know, it's awesome to be able to tell that story of my father was in the World War, but he wasn't around that much, so I can understand. But you see that doesn't seem to be affecting him that much. So that's why I'm not sure if fatherlessness is the biggest problem with Gen Z and if it's something else. Because let's not forget that the boomer generation, most of them, although Gen Z likes to call them spoiled brats and rotten and trying to destroy society, most of them didn't grow up with their fathers because they were in the war. So maybe that was a boomer problem. And it seems that Gen Z also has a problem, but a different problem. Could it be the root of the fatherlessness? I don't know.
A little bit complicated. If you went to him for advice, he'd be like, yeah, you figure it out.
Are you a father yourself?
I have numerous children, roughly somewhere in between 30 and 45, because in my 20s, I was a sperm donor.
Okay, see, that's a big problem right there. Obviously, if you're doing it for like LGBTQ families, that's one thing. But if you're just like a sperm donor so a mom can be a single mother. That's another thing. Why is it that like these Gen X and millennial mothers want to be single mothers? That doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, no, I want to be a single mother. It's not like, oh, I ended up being a single mother. It's I want to be a single mother. Why do you want to do that? Why do you want to inflict that pain upon yourself? And yes, it is kind of painful. Like, again, it's one thing if you had an accident with your partner and now you have this baby and you don't want to abort it, but he does, and then he runs away. That's one thing. But to put yourself in a position that this guy's donating sperm so that you can have a child and be a single mother, that is a totally out of this world concept to me.
I'm Jim Sexton. I'm a divorce lawyer in New York City. I've been practicing divorce law for about 22 years.
If you don't mind me asking, what was your relationship with, like, your father?
My father was an alcoholic. Hardly spoke to me, but never laid hands on me.
Well, he said never lay hands on me at the end there. I'm terribly sorry for anybody who grows up with a father that's an alcoholic. That must be a traumatic experience. I fortunately have not had to deal with that, but I can't imagine what that's like. And I seriously have some great empathy for you guys. I would never want to have to deal with that. I would never want to have to deal with an alcoholic father. That sounds like a horrible thing to go through. So I guess that adds another layer to this fatherless epidemic. Like I said, is the father there, but what else is he doing? You know, versus just being raised by a single mom.
He got sober when my mom died. I finally said to him, like, listen, I'm done with you. She's dead. We don't have anything left to talk about, you and I. Never talked about this before in an interview.
That's very sad. That is very sad.
When 1 in 4 American homes are fatherless, it's clear that it's a growing problem.
Wait, it's now at 1 in 4? I didn't know it was that bad. Oh my gosh. Okay, wow, this really is worse than I thought.
So Gen Z especially are turning to others for guidance, and some are providing that, but some have capitalized.
For all my young boys out there, you guys want to know why I'm successful? I never took a girl seriously, ever.
So I wanted to explore the impact of the fatherlessness crisis, not only for the next generation, but for past generations
I
as well.
never even thought about that too. Is this fatherlessness turning into these guys who are the red-pilled alpha guys who are like, I don't need a woman. I don't need to respect women. I just, I didn't even think about the fatherlessness epidemic even creating those problems. Like, obviously, the stereotype is that it creates more gay guys because they don't have the tough guy father to show them. I didn't even think about it going the other way around. That's very interesting.
You said that your mission is to essentially explore the forgotten gaps of the gender debate. Would you say that this fatherlessness crisis is a forgotten gap in the gender debate here today?
There's an interesting theory called Donahue-Levitt theory. In the 1990s in America, New York was having a massive violent crime surge, and a lot of criminologists were like terrified. And then it went up and up and up and up and up, and then it came drastically down against all expectations, and everyone's falling over themselves trying to explain why.
That part absolutely is the fatherless epidemic. I have heard that before, and it's very clear that in the cities where the culture is very much to impregnate a woman and then run. Let's be honest, that's the culture there. That's where the crime is sky high through the roof, because these kids really don't have a father to ground them and set them in place and give them morals to hold on to. So what they do is then they go out and they have nobody. I mean, they know what's right and wrong inherently. They know it, but they don't have anybody to be like, think about the consequences of what you're about to do and how stupid that would be to set up the rest of your life. They don't have anybody in their life to do that. Like they said, the father's not there. The mother is usually not really in the picture either, because she's trying to provide for these children now, trying to at least give them a roof over their heads. But these kids are then raised with no guidance whatsoever, in schools that are very violent, very harsh, in neighborhoods that are very violent and harsh, and the cycle just repeats itself. So I have heard that point before, and that's a very good point.
Levitt and Donahue came along and proposed this very controversial theory, and the answer is probably women winning reproductive rights 15, 20 years before. So instead of forcing a woman to have a child that she can't afford or doesn't want, that child has an increased likelihood of becoming a criminal later in life. And crime is caused by unwantedness, and abortion reduces unwantedness.
I've heard this argument before for abortion. If you don't think you can take care of the child, don't take care of the child. But you are still responsible to have the child. Just because you slept around and now, oopsie, you have a child, doesn't mean you now have this, oh, well, abortion is safer for the child. there are nuclear families who would love to raise these kids. There are a present father and mother who would absolutely love to have these kids. So if you don't feel like you can take care of the kids, that's perfectly fine, but don't unalive the kid because you feel like it's a necessity to keep going with your life. Suffer through the 9 months, and I know that pregnancy can be a painful time for women, and I'm sorry it's so painful for you guys. I really am. But at the same time, if you went through that, like I've said before, grape is a different scenario, right? That's a different situation. But 99% of the time, it is not that. It is you sleeping around, doing this hookup culture stuff. That's a danger to our society in itself, and that is absolutely another problem with Gen Z. But the thing is, if you are just sleeping around, enjoying the hookup culture, and a baby comes, that's your responsibility. That is your consequence, whether you view it as a good one or a bad one. That is your consequence that came because of you sleeping around in the hookup culture. So I don't feel bad for you, and you still have the responsibility to at least birth the child. If you don't want to take care of the child, again, fine. Give it to a family that would like to take care of this child. So that's not really an excuse for abortion, but I just had to get that point out there because I think it's a lazy excuse to say that, oh, well, let's kill this child because they're just going to turn into a criminal. That's a lazy excuse because there are families that could take care of this child.
So I wanted to ask the streets on what value a father has. What do you think a father brings to the table that a mother doesn't?
How to fix your car or something, or gardening outside. So we do a lot of the manual tasks together.
That's true. A father can help you with, fixing a car and stuff like that. Very handy tools that are useful for life. Let me just say, who knows if I would even know how to put washer fluid in my own car because my dad had to show me where the pipe was. I loved cars, and I know how cars work, but I couldn't find the dang washer fluid pipe in my engine bay, so I had to have my dad show me. And, obviously very grateful for stuff like that. And to put oil in the car, all of that. It's very nice to have a dad for those reasons.
I don't know. My mom was she's like the head honcho of the house, and he's there for support.
My dad was the breadwinner. He's very stable, logical.
Well, it's sort of like, what does a man bring to a relationship?
Yes.
What does a woman bring to the relationship? When you find someone to marry, look at the relationship she has with her father, because that's her role model, and that's the relationship she's going to have with you.
Very base.
So if the person you choose is not just your spouse, but possibly a future mother or father.
That's another thing. Yeah. I love that point.
Fatherlessness doesn't just impact crime, but how people show up in relationships. And so who better to ask than a divorce lawyer about this?
Actually, that's a good point too, before the divorce lawyer even talks. There have been a lot of viral videos lately, video after video of what dating was back then and what it is now. And it's just this sense of the guy is not as committed to the relationship, or he might be, but he's not as involved in, treating the girl right and doing all of this, being a gentleman. He's just being a guy. He's not the gentleman in the relationship. And I'm sitting here as a gay guy, and honestly, I'm not trying to be arrogant or any of that. Where I grew up, I had to go to prom with a woman if I was going to prom, or we called it junior senior. It wasn't prom because we didn't dance. Anyway, I probably learned more about treating a girl right going to prom, going to junior senior from my parents than most of these guys who grew up in a public school ever did without their father, because they probably also grew up in a situation where the father and mother were pretty casual and not taking the relationship seriously. And so I think that's a very good point that he made, but let's keep going.
You could be an excellent parent and just not be good at being a spouse. You might be mismatched with your partner. I mean, a lot of people choose their romantic partners between the ages of 18 and 30. Or you may be the type that you grow apart and you become more, dissimilar. I think the more normal reason why fathers are minimized, unintentional second-order effects of the boom in divorce, the boom in how much people work, and the impact that has on their available time for their families. It's a lot of things all at once.
That is part of it, but honestly, another part of it is the fact that people like you exist and your position exists. It's because we've made relationships so casual and the divorce of those relationships so easy as well. That's a huge problem here. And like he said, people, oh, well, they grow apart. They find a relationship at 20, but then by 26, they've decided they don't want to be with each other anymore. They're going their separate ways. And that's not what it's about. Love makes sacrifices. And in life, you will have to make sacrifices. And some of those sacrifices come in the sense of in your relationship, in your marriage. You can't just run away from every problem or every divide you have with your spouse. Because even when things don't work out, even when you have a division, you have to be able to reason with each other and be like, I can sacrifice here, and can I ask that that you are able to do this? Or, come up with it yourselves. Don't just one person decide it, because that's not how you work things out either. But be like, okay, I have to sacrifice this thing. What are you gonna do to make this work? That's how the relationships last. If you learn to be like, yeah, I'm okay with that through those relationships, that's how you make it work out. That's how you make it last. And like I said, it's because we have people like a divorce lawyer. Well, if we didn't have so many ways to make the divorce so quick and easy, we wouldn't have a need for that sort of thing. So it's just very interesting. That's another problem, and I think it's just going to get worse with Gen Z, because half of Gen Z doesn't even want to be in relationships right now. And could that be because they see the divorce rate and how high it's going? Possibly. But I think it's also just because the relationships have been made so casual, and they're not sure they want it anymore because they aren't willing to commit to a serious relationship.
Mothers with absent or distant husbands are not only at a higher risk of developing antenatal depression, but fatherless children are also at risk. Girls without fathers are 8 times more likely to have teenage pregnancies, while fatherless boys often exhibit aggression, delinquency, and an increased likelihood of committing a crime. And so oftentimes having a father or not can either set you ahead or set you behind.
And that's because the father can't set them straight. You don't have to be a drill sergeant parent, but he's not there to be like instilling those morals in these kids. And the mother, I hate to say it, ladies, but the mother just can't do it in the same way. You can try, but you just can't. And so we talk about this whole soft parenting thing, but part of the problem is that the father isn't there. It's the mothers, and solely the mothers, who are trying to raise these kids. And the mother just does not have the same amount of power as the father does. It's sad. I wish mothers could, but most of them don't. I guess I should put a caveat there. I will say most, because there are some who are, very aggressive, and I'm sure they could take care of their kids. The problem is, they just don't take their mother seriously as much as they do their father. It's sad, but it is what it is.
I wanted to focus on exploring what's exactly causing this crisis.
I think people need to stop having children. They want to have kids as an accessory. It's expensive, and there is a lot of pressure on the man to bring money to the table, and that could be another thing that scares a lot of men.
I have heard that point before, that there are parents, specifically women, who are just viewing children as an accessory, and they're not taking that motherhood role seriously either. But I think that has more to do with the mother than the father, and because the father, if anything, is running away from that. They're not having it as an accessory.
Would you say that the problems that Gen Z are currently experiencing are explained by the fatherlessness crisis?
I do feel like a lack of positive male role models, especially in the media, is an emerging and increasing problem. And we've gone from Mr. Rogers, now we have like Homer Simpson, Peter Griffin, basically clowns, poor reflection of masculinity. And
that's another point too, and I've actually heard this recently, is that it's not just the actual fathers that are the problem, it's how they're represented in our media and in our society as well. Because being a father is almost looked at as a joke nowadays. And being a mother kind of too. Why are we doing that? We are ruining families by having this as a joke. And I remember as a kid growing up, I wasn't allowed, basically the only show I was allowed to watch was Phineas and Ferb. Because, sure, the parents were a little bit goofy, but at least the kids were respectful and, they were involved in a family. And in a lot of other Disney shows, that's not the case. The parents are looked at as these goofy dingbat, really loopy, not there, literally not mentally there in the relationship. My parents would always be like, look at how you're acting after you watch that. Look at how you're acting after you read that. And they would show that that is also affecting me. That is just how the media represents that. And it's teaching kids to be disrespectful to their parents, and that's not okay either.
I know in the UK the Advertising Standards Authority had to actually step in to ban adverts that routinely framed dads as incompetent.
So when this fatherlessness crisis seems like a symptom of a larger problem that's getting worse and worse, why aren't more people talking about it?
Why do you think this topic of male issues have become so polarized? And what impact has that had on being able to hold discourse?
The left have failed them even more so than the right. The right has in some way at least tried to take hold of the conversation, largely through people like Andrew Tate.
Andrew Tate's not good though either.
Who I do not like.
Yeah.
They are a symptom of a wider problem, which is how the left have sort of forgotten boys and men. And although there certainly are advantages to being a man, it's a bit more nuanced than that.
You know what? I didn't even think about that. Like Andrew Tate and Fresh and Fit, how they're basically a rebellion of being rejected by everybody else. That is a really interesting take. That's very interesting. That's kind of eye-opening, honestly. Wow.
Men and boys are increasingly conservative anyway, and women and girls are becoming increasingly liberal.
That's exactly right. With 44% of Gen Z women identifying as liberal compared to 25% of Gen Z men, this marks the largest gender gap since polling began in 1998. And the right is capitalizing on that trend. Republican Party candidate Vivek Ramaswamy has supported the importance of the nuclear family and the two-parent household. And he has criticized American culture and government for pushing anti-family incentives. And many right-wing influencers and organizations are following suit. But if we're gonna look at it both sides, is this an attempt by the right to pander male voters, similar to how the left has targeted women according to George? Whatever be the case, clear that the issue is more complex with numerous factors rather than the simplistic perspectives of just blaming women.
I didn't even think about that, because typically women are more emotional and men are more statistical. And that's kind of exactly how the two sides have taken it. Right is very much focused on facts over feelings, and left is very much focused on feelings over facts. That's where the whole, you know, genderqueer, non-binary stuff comes from. It's that whole how you feel versus what's real, versus the right being, you know, very matter of fact, in some cases being extremely rude and degrading because they're just focused on the facts and not on how you feel. And I do understand both sentiments, but typically I agree with what is reality, and reality is fact. And like I said, maybe that's just the man in me talking, the logistical man, but fact is just more important than feeling. And I've also gone through depression and those phases of like being all in your feels. And it's so refreshing and such an eye-opener once you get out of that space. It truly is, because you teach yourself, you know what, I might feel that way, but it's not going to change life, and it's not going to change, you know, what's happening around me. So I'm just going to have to suck it up and deal with it. And sometimes, yes, it is okay to get in your feels, but don't let that energy overtake you, because that's how we lead down dark roads. And so maybe that's also another problem of why leftists tend to be a more angry, depressed group, is because they're so in their feels that they've become blindsided to what life really is. And it's affecting them in a very serious way, and it's taking a very big mental toll on them. And they don't even realize it because they're all caught up in social justice warrior, and I identify as a pig, and my pronouns are oink oink. You know, it's just... It's very interesting. But yes, I see where he's coming from with that point.
So the most important question is, what is the solution?
As a divorce lawyer, how do we fix this fatherlessness crisis?
From a legal level, people learn through fear and greed.
And that's
they do the
not
right
how
thing 'cause
we
they're
solve
afraid
it.
of getting in trouble. So we have to create consequences for the serious problem of alienating children from a father or mother. Fatherhood, it holds a mirror up to you. If you saw somebody drop their wallet and no one would ever see it, a lot of people go, yeah, just stick it in my pocket then. And if you say to them, what would you tell your kid to do? That's the real test of their morality.
So with his point there, I think it's another point too, that you kind of turn into your parents as life goes on. And I know I felt this before. I'm like, wow, where did that come from? I'm starting to sound like my mom. I'm starting to sound like my dad. But with that, if there's a fatherless epidemic, if the father is not there, then you have no one to look to for those skills as well. And once again, that cycle can repeat because you don't have again, those morals in you that you were supposed to get from your father to be like, okay, wait a minute, what am I doing here? No, that's wrong. I shouldn't be thinking that because that's gonna cause this problem and that problem. You don't have that from your parents. In fact, you probably barely even have one parent to instill any sort of morals in you. So yeah, that absolutely is another effect of that.
Growing up, my dad was by no means an alcoholic or abusive. In fact, quite the opposite. He was always there for me and really gave me a great childhood. But like I'm sure some of you watching can relate, as I've gotten older, I've realized that I've never had that type of relationship that I've desperately wanted as a kid from a father. I call it lack of trust or emotional connection, but at a certain period, it's gotten to a point where I've developed resentment, where even a simple phone call from him was stressful.
Yes. Okay, I feel you there again. I honestly was kind of hoping he might not bring up this point, but I absolutely feel you there. Personally, myself, like he said, my father was always there. He was always taking care of us, and you know, he works because, you know, my siblings every single day to provide for the family. A wonderful man, and you know, I feel like sometimes I take that for granted, but I also feel like I never had the same connection with my dad because he wasn't the one that was always there. You know, my mom was home more than my dad because she didn't work. But also, while my dad was there, it wasn't that he was in a corner. He just wasn't as emotionally connected to his kids. He just wasn't and isn't. No, like, no shade to him, but I just feel like he just doesn't connect as much to his kids as much. And I get what he's saying there of you wish you had a deeper connection with your dad.
I hope now that when my own sons, if they become fathers someday, that they will move the ball a little further. Maybe they won't be workaholics like I was. It's never too late to, I think, become a better father or a better son. And I think there's real value in it.
Because if the goal of fatherhood is to continue moving things along, then what the hell was I doing as a son to make that happen? Because things will always get busier and busier. But if we're too busy to even talk to the person who's raised us since I've had in my diapers, what kind of father am I gonna be when I have kids?
Well, dang. That is a good note to end it on. Wow. That's a good last point, again. Very good last point. What are we doing as sons and daughters to connect with our fathers? You know, while the fatherlessness, obviously you can't control whether your father's there or not. And if he's not there, then you can't connect with him. I understand that. And that must be, like I said at the beginning, that must be a very, very sad thing to go through. But those of us who do have our dads, but feel like they're not as actively involved, what can we do to connect with our dads? That's a very insightful message there. Maybe I will just have to connect with my dad more after after this is over. So is the fatherlessness crisis destroying our generation? Absolutely, it is. But also, how many of us are actually putting in the work to connect with the fathers that we do have? Yeah, this was a great video. Good job, Gen. Keep putting out awesome content. You always do. I absolutely loved this. Thank you for this video. This was very insightful, and I hope you guys enjoyed. I absolutely loved watching this and, you know, being able to think through this. Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode of Hot Takes. If you enjoyed it, make sure to like and subscribe. If you have not already, leave me a comment with your thoughts. What did you think about the episode? And if you want even more content, make sure to follow TikTok and Instagram at Ian Talks Hot Takes.